Hi, this is George Alger with today's edition of OurVentura.com. And today we're going to be talking about wine. And specifically, we have the president of the Old Creek Ranch Winery in Ventura, and that would be John Whitman. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much.
Did I get that title right? Is it president? Is it CEO? Is it God? What is it?
It's my wife and I own the winery. We own the ranch and the winery. So whenever anybody asks, who are you, I say, my wife and I own the ranch and winery.
Okay.
So that's the easiest way.
We should have had your wife on here, too.
That would be interesting.
Well, anyway, I mean, there's a variety of viewpoints, and as an owner, I'm fascinated to find out some of your perspectives on.
She would tell you that this is what I do.
Okay.
This is my thing, so to speak. She doesn't involve herself too much in the winery.
Okay. Well, then let's start with a little bit about you. How is it that you came to be the owner of a winery?
My favorite way to answer that is that we did it the old-fashioned way, and that was we inherited it. So we did. We inherited half of the winery and a ranch. And then after 3 years, we bought my brother-in-law out of the winery, and a couple of years later, we bought him out of the ranch. So it wasn't something he wanted to do on a daily basis, certainly. And so that's how we came about it. Half of it we inherited, half of it we bought.
Now, making wine seems so romantic, but I can envision that the reality is the opposite, that it's just hard work. Is it really a mix of both?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of physical labor involved in it. Now we're in the crush. We've already crushed our first grapes. Tomorrow I'll be going out looking at other vineyards that we're in and checking them for their sugars, and I'll bring back samples and we'll do analysis of them in the winery. But more directly to answer your question, that there's a lot of physical labor, and there's times that you have to be very, very careful with it and check it, make sure that everything is properly at rest, aging, and developing into, in our case, a premium wine.
Okay. Now, explain the difference between how some of these roles may relate to being the owner of a winery versus having a winemaker.
You could, an owner, I can make wine, you can make wine, our audience can make wine. There's kits available, there's a couple of different companies here in Ventura that will sell you these kits, and you can make wine, and you can buy grapes, and you may become a home winemaker, somebody who makes it at home, just as the tradition of many other areas of the world have done, namely Italy, France, and others, many others. The difference, though, between an owner and a winemaker is traditionally is that the owner is funding it and working with the winemaker to get a result that they want, and that is a quality of wine.
So you have a winemaker. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
How do you select a winemaker?
Well, in our particular case, when we inherited the wine, we had one winemaker.
Okay.
That winemaker left, and the original winemaker had come back. He had he had a younger daughter, needed to be away from the winery on the weekends, so he left. So the original came back, and then he retired in 2007. In the meantime, another winemaker who approached us asked for space in our winery to make wine of his own, under his own label, and we said fine to that. He was a very nice man and had a wonderful family, and so we thought, let's give him an opportunity, let him, younger, but other than that, I mean, there's classifieds looking for winemakers. Generally, it's word of mouth, searching around, looking for somebody that might be moving away from somebody. Somebody might hear that somebody is moving away from a winery or is looking for a different experience, or an assistant winemaker that is ready to make that transition. That's traditionally where you find them.
Now, from an outside perspective, it appears, at least to me, that the making of wine is truly a labor of love. Is that a reality?
Well, there's business.
Yeah, as in any.
The business side of it. If you've got a large investment, I guess small investment too, you want to get a return off of it. And but for me, it's all about the quality of the wine. Why would you want to be involved in wine that's average or below average? And so that's been my motivation, is to get the best grapes, to get best in the correct wood, and the best process for that, and somebody to oversee it.
Okay, now I want to ask you about the grapes in a moment, but you bring up the process. So is the process something that varies to some degree or a great degree between different winemakers or different wineries?
Can.
Okay.
Yeah, it can, but one way or the other, you're going to convert the sugars of grapes into alcohol, and you're eventually going to age that for however long in some way or form, and then you're going to put it in a bottle and you're going to sell it. So that part of the process is the same. What goes on between there and how you go about it can vary. There's standards of the industry as to how to make wine. I mean, but you have to have experience and to really make above average wine.
Okay. Now, in terms of experience, this would be the winemaker's experience, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that winemaker could a good winemaker do a great job in any vicinity in the world, or is that person particularly adept at the region that they have the most experience in?
Well, they have to have the freedom of grapes, the selection of the grapes, how the grapes are grown. They have to have a facility that has proper equipment in it, proper cleaning equipment, proper storage facility. So there are some basics that you need. Some people skip past certain aspects of it. Example, our barrel room and our bottle storage room, two separate rooms, are held at 55 degrees. 55 degrees is an ideal temperature to store wine, and we refrigerate that. We pay quite a bit of money for that because it's electrical power that does it. And if we could build it into the ground and put it under the earth and capture some of the natural cooling from the earth, then that would have been better, but we don't. So some people don't refrigerate. Some people make wine in too hot an area and it's not held at the right temperature, and they got problems. Some people, it's cooler, might be cool enough for them and their wines and their winemaking practices, or their capital, what they can afford. So that's just one example, storing it at the proper temperature.
Okay.
And that's true of the bottle as well.
Okay. Let's change gears here for a moment and speak about wine and its relationship in the world. So for instance, French wine, in my understanding, is pretty famous. I also understand that California wine is a peer. Is that true?
Is a what?
A peer? It's of equal value? Quality?
Depends who's sampling it.
Okay.
There is a difference. Even though we're growing the same grapes, for the most part, and California has a different. I'll call it terroir. That's a word that's used and misunderstood, but the grapes develop differently in California than they do in France, and France has such a long history that they've developed a certain palate and a certain style of wines, and in California we're New World, we're younger, we tend to apply newer concepts. Not that the French aren't aware of them, you know. We know what's going on each side of the planet, as does South Africa, etc. All of the other areas of production. But everybody, all places, all good growing regions have excellent wines that come out of those regions. They may not be the same as the other regions, and they may be for a different reason. But that's a fact. There's good wines out of every growing region. So, are we in competition? Sort of, but we don't try to. We tend to make more European style, but somebody who's a sommelier or very acquainted with European wines would recognize. You say this is probably a California wine.
Okay. And that, when you say it's a California wine, or someone with some expertise would say it's a California wine, it's, even if it's the same grapes, they're really able to determine the region through the, through the taste.
Yeah. France is in a higher, I'm going to say, latitude, whichever that way is around the globe, and it's more in line with Washington State, and we're more in line with Italy, and the wines of Europe tend to be cooler regions, so they're growing. The number of heat hours that their grapes get are lower, and some of them they actually, Champagne is a very good example. Champagne is way to the north in France. And the reason that the champagnes are so wonderful there, one reason, is that they don't develop into the high sugars. They don't have the sunlight. They don't have the heat hours. And they, in truth, can be, I'm not going to say they all are, I don't know all of the grapes they grow there, but certainly the Chardonnays they grow there, they're underdeveloped in terms of if you were going to make a still wine, a Chardonnay. But to make a sparkling wine, it's right on. And so there's an example of how it might be different based upon where we are on the earth, or in our position to the equator.
Okay. Well, John, we're running out of time here, but I was wondering if you might be able to comment on personal winemaking. Is this a difficult process?
For somebody personally to make wine?
Yeah, someone to do it at their own home.
At their home? You just have to read, and you have to understand the jeopardies. And you get the proper yeast, you get some grapes or juice, and you ferment it, and then you put it into containers, and you age it for however long you're going to age it. You just have to know that there are jeopardies. It's alive. It's progressing. It's moving from the beginning to the end, and as it progresses, it may come off that course, and that's a trick. Knowing what's going on in the barrels, or if you're a winemaker, you're making them in glass containers or stainless steel containers. You have to know. You have to know and recognize that something needs to happen. You need to adjust.
Could let's say a very competent home winemaker produce an excellent wine, or would be the best hope would be an average wine?
For the most part, they're average, but there are home winemakers that have gone into the commercial side of wine,
okay,
and they've excelled. And most of them eventually work as assistants for excellent winemakers,
okay,
and fill in all those gaps that they need to know to achieve that result for themselves.
Okay. Well, John, we're out of time, but could you please provide a website where someone might be able to find out more information about you or your winery?
It's OldCreekRanch.com, and we're halfway between Ventura and Ojai, and it's a beautiful, idyllic ranch at the end of a road, Old Creek Road, and people come up and bring picnics and enjoy very good wine.
You have tours?
Yeah.
You have wine tours, okay.
Yeah, we give tours, even impromptu ones.
Okay.
So, yeah, we just enjoy it. We enjoy people enjoying our ranch and our wines.
Great. All right, well, thank you for joining us, John. It's a pleasure having you. This is George Alger, signing off for Our Ventura, and thanking John Whitman from the Old Creek Ranch Winery in Ventura. Till we see you again.